Hello, everyone. It's time for Evidence for Faith, the voice of Ratio Christi. I'm Keith Kendricks, and today's topic is going to be about the Reason Rally. But we have a few items to get to first. Let me just remind everyone that you can check out our website, evidenceforfaith.com. That's evidence, the number 4faith.com. And if you'd like to listen to past archive shows, you can listen to them there at the website, or you can listen to them on iTunes. Well, Kirk is off today, so I have the studio full of guests and a couple online too. So we will get to that in just a second, but I want to start with the obligatory quote of the day. This is from J. Budziszewski, the professor, and he says, "The whole meaning of morality is a rule that we ought to obey, whether we like it or not. If so, then the idea of creating a morality we like better is incoherent. Moreover, it would seem that until we had created our new morality, we would have no standard by which to criticize God. Since we have not yet created one, the standard by which we judge him must be the very standard that he gave us. If it is good enough to judge him by, then why do we need a new one?" And that from J. Budziszewski. Excellent. Excellent. That's from his book, What We Can't Not Know. Well, we have on the line with us Ray Siervo from Ray Siervo Ministries, who lives up in Long Branch, New Jersey. Ray, welcome to Evidence for Faith.
Well, thanks, Keith. It's good to be with you.
And it's good to talk to you again. We want to highlight the conference that you're doing this coming weekend, right? Next weekend?
Yes, that's right. Friday night and all day Saturday.
Well, first, introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, it's a long story. I've been in Christian ministry for nearly 40 years, and in the last 12 to 15 years been doing work in apologetics, mainly because I saw that I just didn't have answers for things that people were bringing questions about. And actually, it's 12 years ago now. My wife and I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I attended Southern Evangelical Seminary and got a master's degree in apologetics. In 2007, we moved back to New Jersey. We'd been here before in church work, and we actually came back to a church that I started some 30 years ago, and just started to look and see how can we influence the Christian community with the knowledge of why we believe what we believe, which is really what drives, I think, my ministry today. And 4 years ago, we did our first conference here in New Jersey, the New Jersey Christian Apologetics Conference. And this weekend coming, we have Dr. Bill Dembski who's going to be with us. And I mostly travel and do seminars, preach in churches, do conferences, and speak on apologetics or worldview. So in a nutshell, that's kind of who I am and what I've been doing.
Great. Now, this is the 4th annual New Jersey Christian Apologetics Conference. The topic this year is God and Science. Tell us a little bit about that topic.
Yeah, we try to center it around a main speaker that we're having. We try to center the topic of the conference around a speaker. And we were so fortunate this year to get Dr. Dembski to be with us both Friday night and Saturday.
Yeah, he is a big name in the ID movement, intelligent design.
Yeah, I think he's become actually the public intellectual for intelligent design. He's the person that people look to, and certainly his writing is prolific. And I'm sure he's in demand as a speaker quite a bit. I just heard recently that he's gone on the faculty of Southern Evangelical Seminary, that he'll be beginning there in August this year. So he'll be one of the professors there for their department on science.
Well, Ray, tell us a little bit about his work and some of what he'll be talking about at the conference.
Well, Dr. Dembski, as I mentioned before, he's become the public intellectual, meaning that he's the person people look to when they want the answers about intelligent design. And perhaps a lot of people think that intelligent design is somehow tied to creationism. And Dr. Dembski, I think, makes it very clear that what they're really looking for and what they do with intelligent design is they study pattern patterns in nature that indicate design. And it really has nothing to do with the designer. They're not making any claim on who the designer is or that they believe God created the earth, though Dr. Dembski is a Christian. The Discovery Institute that he works with has Muslims on their staff. I even believe that they have some non-believers on their staff, people who don't believe in God at all, some agnostics. It's people who are just studying and looking at evolution and looking at, as I said, they study nature to see these patterns that indicate that they just could not have evolved over long, slow periods of time. And Dr. Dembski, as I mentioned before, has authored some 20 books and I'm sure hundreds of articles on this, and is continually under fire by the Darwinist community, if I could say that.
Right.
And hopefully, one of the things that I've heard him do in conferences, which is, to me, one of the reasons why I wanted him to come, is that he is so appealing and motivational in getting people involved in standing up for creation, even though I mentioned that he's not intelligent design doesn't stand for that, but just to look and see what evolution, Darwinian evolution, leads to, and that the church needs to take a stand and needs to become educated and involved in this whole movement. And I believe that, hopefully, I believe that he's going to speak on that at least one of the sessions that he's with us.
Right. Now, if I understand right, he's a double PhD, a PhD in mathematics and a PhD in philosophy, and he was really the first one to publish an academic paper or book on it was titled The Design Inference, published by Cambridge University Press. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ray, but I believe this was the work that essentially established very specifically how it is that human beings detect intelligence. So if we are walking along the beach and we see Mary Loves John written in the sand, we know that that was not the result of the wave action on the beach. And we immediately, our brain tells us instinctively that that is the product of an intelligence. And he was able to really specifically, point by point, explain logically what's going on and how it is that we can know that that is in fact an intelligence.
That's correct. And he points out just the fact that the universe, that what we call creation or nature, is knowable. That the fact that we can understand it, that points to the design inference, that it was made this way so that we can understand it. And he has been groundbreaking. He also has a Master of Divinity from Princeton Theological Seminary.
Wow.
Among all these other things that he's done, 2 doctorates and an MDiv.
Pretty impressive. Well,
Very impressive, absolutely.
Tell us about some of the other speakers and topics, and let's just remind people this is going to be March 30th, so that's Friday evening, and then all day Saturday, the 31st?
That's correct. Friday evening, the meeting will open with Simon Brace, who was instrumental in beginning Ratio Christi.
That's right.
And Simon is really from Zimbabwe, but grew up in South Africa. And Simon is a motivational speaker. Beautiful Christian man, just out there, just sharing the word. And I believe he's speaking on the subject of spiritual warfare on Friday night. And then Dr. Dembski will speak the second session. That session is open to the public. It's at the Long Branch Covenant Church. That's 355 Joline Avenue in Long Branch. It's really Route 36 as you come off the Parkway at exit 105. And we'll start about 7 o'clock. We'll start at 7 o'clock. And then the next day we have Dr. Dembski speaking again in the morning, and he'll be followed by Simon's wife, Nell Brace. Nell has a double master's in philosophy and biblical studies. She's also, she's South African. And Nell has a really great message about developing a Christian mind, the whole process of starting to think biblically and think theologically and philosophically from a Christian perspective. And I've heard Nell speak on this subject, and she really encourages women especially to not just think that they have no part in this or can't take part in this. And then our next speaker is Dr. Max Herrera, who is a personal friend of mine, and he's going to speak on answering the new atheist. I believe he's picked on I'm not sure if it was Sam Harris or Christopher Hitchens' work, and really read it thoroughly. Max is an excellent scholar. He's got a PhD in philosophy from Marquette University. And Max is very eloquent in his speaking, but he's also very down to earth. None of these speakers are speaking over the heads of our everyday church people. I think it may make you reach a little bit, but they're not going to be speaking over your head. And then Nell Brace is also going to speak on the contrast or the difference between what Muslims believe, what Islam stands for, and what Christianity stands for. Nell and Simon both took part in what's called Speaker's Corner in London. I'm not sure, I'm sure it's one of the parks there in London where anybody can go and bring a step stool or a ladder and stand up and just start a debate. And most of the time, or many times, there's debates between Muslims and Christians. And both Simon and Nell took part in those things when they were living in London before they came to America and went to seminary here. So we really have a full schedule. Dr. Herrera is going to speak twice. Nell will speak twice. And I may speak the last session. It's really open right now. If Simon feels compelled to continue on with what he starts on Friday night, I'll let him have the last session, but we have a full session there. And there is registration required for Saturday.
All right. Tell people how they can register, what they need to do, and where they can find more information.
You can register online at, very simply, it's www.njconference.com. And you can find out all the information right there. If you want to register by mail, there's instructions there as well. You can do that as well, or you can register right online through a PayPal or a credit card.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Ray, we've been talking to Ray Ciervo of Long Branch, New Jersey, talking about the 4th Annual New Jersey Christian Apologetics Conference. Ray, thank you for being part of Evidence for Faith.
Well, thank you for having me, Keith. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this.
Well, if you're just joining in, you're listening to Evidence for Faith. I'm Keith Kendricks, and we're going to be talking about the atheist rally that was in Washington, D.C. yesterday. So to help us do that, we have Adam Tucker on the line. Adam is a campus director for the University of North Carolina at Greensboro Ratio Christi Apologetics Club. Adam, welcome to Evidence for Faith.
Thanks for having me, Keith. Good to be with you.
So, Adam, tell us about this. What was the idea? Why should Christians be going to an atheist rally? What is that all about?
Well, it was quite an experience. That is for sure.
Was this your idea?
No, not really. It actually came about. One of our fellow Ratio Christi directors just kind of made a passing comment in our Facebook directors group about some of us should ride some of the Reason Rally buses that they had going from different cities and go up to the rally and ride their buses and have some conversations. And I didn't really think much about it until I mentioned the rally to our student president. And he was kind of interested in it, and we did a little research and found out it was just one day, and we could maybe charter a bus ourselves and, just make a day trip to D.C. and back. And so he was excited, and we talked to some students, and they were excited, and talked to Blake Anderson, who works with Ratio Christi as well, and he was excited, so it just kind of mushroomed from there.
And what was the point of going down there?
Essentially, our whole mission was, as Greg Cook likes to say, just put a stone in someone's shoe and just have one-on-one friendly conversations and ask questions and of the atheists who were there, and just let them know, hopefully, in short conversations, that Christianity is worth thinking about. And, of course, we gave out some portions of a book called True Reason that was written in response to the Reason Rally that Tom Gilson headed up that project. And William Lane Craig and Sean McDowell and others contributed chapters to that book, so we were promoting that as well. Right.
We talked to Tom Gilson last week about the book and went over some of the things that were in it. So did you actually give away copies of the book itself, or just portions of it, or what?
We had printed out the first chapter of the book, and then we had some business cards with the TrueReason.org website and just some provocative questions. Can atheism adequately answer some questions that we had listed there? And so we handed some of those out to to folks who were willing. We obviously weren't forcing anything on anyone, but just trying to get the word out.
Now, the last time I was on the mall, it was with Promise Keepers, a Christian organization, and there were hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people there with multiple large screen televisions out for people to watch that were so far away from the stage you couldn't even see the people. So I'm sure that since Christianity seems to be dying in the West, that I'm sure that the atheists way outnumbered that group, right?
I don't think there were quite that many there. I will say I was impressed with the numbers, especially given the weather. I have not heard an official count, but the last estimate I heard was somewhere around 30,000, but I have not heard confirmation of that.
Okay, well, everyone in the studio is shaking their heads, so I guess I should introduce some of the college students that we have with us. These are people who went down to meet with Adam and was part of that effort to help talk some reason into some of the Reason Rally attendance. So let me introduce Joe Gonzalez, who's president of Ratio Christi at Richard Stockton College.
Oh, hi, Keith.
And Jessica Richardson is vice president of the organization.
Hi, everybody.
And we have with us also Jen Quinn, who is one of the founders and a former student at Richard Stockton College. So hello, Jen.
Hello.
So, guys, you are all shaking your heads. You don't believe that there were 30,000 people there.
Well, I've been to a Passion conference with 44,000 people, and it wasn't anywhere near 44,000, even half of 44,000. I would say maybe at best 500 to 7,500 people. So maybe 5,000 to 7,500 people.
All right. There you go. Adam, you're being shot down here. They think there was less than 10,000.
Me and Jesse agree.
Right.
You hope they're right? So tell us a little bit about what happened. Adam, you go first, and just tell us anything that you think was interesting. And did you meet? Let's put it this way: did you meet any resistance? Were people really angry that you showed up? I mean, why should a Christian go to an atheist rally? It's their rally, right?
Yeah, well, being kind of behind the scenes of this, I fielded some of the email responses we got through the True Reason website and a couple of threats and different things like that. So, some of the leadership had some of these concerns in the back of our minds and not really sure exactly what we were getting ourselves into. But as far as my experience, it turned out to be a very uneventful day, and folks we talked to were quite friendly, and some of them talked for quite a bit of time. And that pretty much summarizes the reports I got from most everyone else that was there. I think everybody had really good experiences. Of course, there were other Christian groups that were there that were, holding up their big banners and had no problem getting into arguments and drawing large crowds around themselves and that sort of thing, which we were absolutely trying to avoid ourselves. So that was certainly going on, but not with our group. I think everybody with us had a fruitful experience, and
so this wasn't the Westboro Baptists in attendance. Didn't the Reason Rally?
I didn't see them. I've heard reports that a few of them were there and weren't there for long. I did not see them personally, but no, the other Christian groups that were there were more the street preacher type approach, not from Westboro though.
All right, and not being too obnoxious, I hope.
Well, they didn't take the approach we were taking. We'll put it that way.
They were definitely quite a bit obnoxious from what we experienced.
Oh, really? Being in people's face, and you're going to go to hell or something like that?
Just like you're damned to, for an eternity in hell, and you're a sinner, just constantly putting down any atheist that came up to them, and it definitely wasn't done in loving kindness the way it should have been at all.
Wow.
You actually called one guy homosexual the whole time in that center, so it was kind of a little bit funny to see.
Yeah. Wow.
One of them, actually, when they first started coming, we went up and we're talking to one of the guys holding the signs, and there was an atheist coming up, honestly, just asking him a question, and he was like, it's just because you need to repent, and just not talking in a loving, reasonable manner at all, which is what we were trying to do. It just seemed like they were putting up walls and just angering them more instead of trying to love them and reason with them.
Well, I guess if any of our listeners are wondering about what they would say in a kind of a situation like that, this is what Ratio Christi and Evidence for Faith is all about, is to help you to be able to address the real issues and not be in a position where you have nothing to say except you're going to hell unless you accept Jesus. So, Adam, tell us a little bit about what the itinerary was, what the plan was, the speakers, and did they have breakout sessions? Or I guess that's a little tough to do on the mall. They just have to listen one after another. Tell us about that, and I'll have the students chime in on anything they saw about what you're talking about.
Yeah, we didn't see the official schedule until maybe a week out, a week before the event. So we were kind of surprised with how they had it organized. Like you said, can't have breakout sessions or anything, so it was just one speaker after another with some music mixed in and comedians and that sort of thing. But nobody spoke longer than, I think, 15 or 20 minutes. And to be quite honest, after our plan was, to listen to the speakers, use that as building blocks to ask questions and that sort of thing. But I'll be honest with you, after I heard the first maybe 4 or 5, and they were all saying the same thing, I pretty much zoned out the rest of the day because nobody was saying anything substantial, and they were all just really attacking caricature after caricature after caricature of Christianity, and it just, after a while, it was so monotonous and obvious that they were really not interested in reasoning at all.
Interesting. So no logical arguments?
Not that considered, no. I mean, obviously they thought they were being logical, but they were simply attacking a straw man the entire time.
It was each of the speakers, it just was so redundant. It felt like it was just attack religion. And I personally, like a few of us, we were really looking forward to hearing what Richard Dawkins was going to say, too. We waited around, and when he finally went up, he kind of just reiterated what everyone else was saying. He spoke for about 15 minutes and was just actually commanded them a couple times, like, you mock them, you ridicule them to Christians, and it was a reason rally. It was clearly he was eliciting an emotional, angry response from them instead of, like, trying to reason with them. So, and he told us, you ask Christians why they believe what they believe, and they'll say it's because they want to be a good person. And we're like, no, we want you to come and ask us why we're a Christian. Like, we'll be happy to give you some evidences for that.
So did anybody hear any arguments at all for atheism or against the existence of God, or
from the speakers or from the crowd?
Yeah, the speakers or the crowd, I guess.
Well, we went out in pairs. I mean, at least our group from Stockton did. And I think also the group that we met up with at the rally, which is very interesting. So we went out in pairs and just started conversations with people, which is very awkward for most of us for our first time. So we kind of just approached, me and Jen actually approached 2 men and just asked them what they thought about the rally. And these are 2 atheist men that said this rally isn't reasonable. It's just a mob that inciting feelings and emotions. And we were like, well, can feelings and emotions be rational? And like he said, in this manner, no, it can't. So this rally, he actually admitted it wasn't one of reason, but actually looked like one of intolerance. Especially with Dawkins saying ridicule Christians with contempt. It sounds like he just wants to promote more intolerance within the atheist community towards Christians.
Right. But, sounded like hate speech, maybe somebody might say.
Yeah, no better than a Christian that goes around saying you're going to hell. So,
right.
But we did hear some arguments though from these 2 men. If you want to hear.
Yeah, let's get into it. Why not?
Yeah. So, me and Jen approached them, just asked them, where they stood, and this one guy was a Catholic and he fell from the faith. The other guy was a physicist, and I guess he never believed in God. Mm-hmm. So we said, if we gave you a reasonable argument, would you accept it? He said, sure. So we started talking to them about certain aspects of God and how it came to be certain things.
Well, go ahead and, since we have a lot of atheists and non-Christians who listen to the show, go ahead and give us an argument.
Well, Jen took the guy that was a Catholic and talked to him about almost at our conversations with the 2 men, and I talked to the guy who was a physicist. Right. We're still in school, but learning to be a physicist. So I conversated with him, and I actually got him to come from relativism and go to absolute truth. So he actually came in believing that you can never know absolute truth, and then going to believe that you can know absolute truth. And so the claim started was he said that there's some kind of light, and there's a particle. There's a substance that can be a particle and a light or a ray.
Oh, okay, maybe a photon that can be a wave, or a particle. Gotcha.
And on a micro level, but on a macro level, we can't use that same formula, so we use the law of relativity. Mm-hmm. So he said these 2, while they're both true, so at least they're both laws, both work, and yet contradict each other. So that's great because for a fact the law is not absolute truth. It's only 99%. 99% certain, but it can be, if a law is disproven, it's no longer a law. And scientists accept that kind of theory, then nothing can be absolute in science.
Okay.
So he agreed with me. I was like, great. So let's go on absolute truth, because this is not absolute truth. So I said, can you agree with the quote, "I think, therefore I am"?
Uh-huh.
He said, this is a trap. I was like, that's not a trap. Well, yes, it's kind of like it's a trap. I'm not trying to do it to...
Right. You wanted to show him that there can be something that's really true.
Right. So, I told him it would be a very dangerous road when he goes down this if he says yes. And he said yes. So I'd say, okay, so that even though you're thinking right now, you're in some kind of plane of existence, even though you can't confirm or deny what it is. He said, yes. So that's one absolute truth claim. If you have one absolute truth claim, it completely debunks relativism, because relativism, which is a contradiction within itself, says there can never be any absolute truth.
Right.
So
everything
then
is relative, right?
Right. So then he said, okay, I agree to that. So this has to be, even though the only absolute truth I know is this. So wonderful. Even though interpretation may be relative, can be interpreted different ways, and maybe I can be wrong and you can be right, and we can both be wrong. You don't really know, but it doesn't change the fact that there's a truth out there.
Excellent.
And then we brought it back to God and the importance that you need to have absolute truth with relativism. So when you go into like an atheist and a Christian, you say, one of the Christian says, "I believe in God," and the atheist says, "Well, I don't believe there is a God."
Right.
And then the man that is onlooking to this conversation has to say, can't sit in the gray area, because that doesn't make any sense. There is
That's
a God
right.
while there is not a God.
Right.
So he has to, because we accept absolute truth, he can't be in the gray. He can't be agnostic. Right. He has to either say, assert A, there is God, or B, there is not God.
Right.
So the importance of believing in God and not God. And then you would go into like reasonable arguments of why there is God compared to not God.
Arguments and evidence, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, great. Excellent. All right, Joe, that's a terrific story. So, Adam, any stories you want to tell us about?
I think from conversations I had, and honestly, I don't know if it was just from being behind the scenes and knowing the threats and the First Amendment threats that we had been given, and obviously our unwelcomed presence there. I was a little more hesitant than probably many of the students were, and I can't say enough about our students and your students, and I was just so proud of them. They did an amazing job. Oh my goodness, it gives me cold chills thinking about how awesome they were. But
so nobody...
in the conversations I had, I ran into a lot of scientism. Science is our only means of truth.
Right.
The moral argument came up over and over. Everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people were holding signs they were giving out that said "good without God." So that was obviously a very easy starting point for conversations, but it's still, the ones I had at least, boiled down to scientism, and science shows us why we're good and why we do this and how it's good for our species, and which obviously misses the point entirely. And even if it can explain how we know morality, it doesn't explain why the good is the good and why anyone should actually do that. So they missed the point in that, but really just the whole notion that science is the only means of truth, and what the conversations I had was just really the bottom line to a lot of people.
So nobody got beat up?
Not that I know of.
Okay. None of the students got beat up, and hopefully they didn't beat anybody up, unless it was intellectually.
I actually ran into the same problem of only science can be used to determine absolute truth, and me and Jen ran into the problem, and I ran into that problem again with another couple. And
well, isn't that true? I mean, it sounds sort of true. I mean, science has been very reliable in the past. It's allowed us to build airplanes and computers, and so it seems that this is a good way of discovering truth. So why don't we just only pay attention to science and listen to what it has to say?
Well, we saw the issue with it. We actually, this is the first step we use to determining what is truth and what is not truth, if you're not relativist or not. So the second step would be, well, how can you determine truth? And we asked, people over there, they're like, yeah, one lady was a scientist, and she said, I had a PhD in science, so if I can't prove it empirically, it can't be true. I was like, is that really true? And she was with her husband, and I asked her, how do you know your husband loves you? She said, through his actions and through his words. So and then I asked her, couldn't he do it in bad intent? So couldn't he just be lying? Maybe he wants your money. Like, you're a PhD. Maybe he wants your billions of dollars that you're going to get, Dr. Lady, Uh-huh. She's like, well, I'm a poor scientist, but I don't think so. I think, the way that he does this and shows me affection, and the way we feel really shows me that he loves me. So I asked her, you've taken the abstract idea of love, which is not physical, and determining truth upon that through what? Feelings and evidence. So really, it's nothing to do with science. yeah, you determined, you came to that point. And then she just said, yeah. And she like, with kind of like, with like disdain, because she didn't want to say yes.
Right.
But she knew it was true.
Right. Very good. Jessica, we haven't heard much from you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your experiences?
I mean, I guess I was more standoffish about going because I had taken the time to like read all the blogs out there about what this event was going to be and how the atheists were reacting to finding out that Christians were coming. And I was a little bit scared to talk to them because I didn't feel like it was going to be well received at all, and I didn't think we were going to be able to get any sort of intelligent dialogue going on.
Just to let our listeners know, Jessica was a former atheist herself.
Yes.
So you have a kind of a feel for what the atheist mindset is and what they're thinking.
Yes. Although I wouldn't. I typically, I don't think that I would have ever gone to an atheist rally like this back when I was an atheist.
Apparently, a lot of atheists didn't want to go either.
Because getting there, I mean, it really felt more like either a hate rally or some sort of twisted church session because, like, they had their music, although I wouldn't personally call it music. It was awful. And I mean, it was very misogynistic and hypocritical to what they were saying.
Interesting. How misogynistic?
They were actually just completely ranking on Christians because of, women are just supposed to be looked at as beauty and we're manipulated throughout the Bible and this and that. And, women are a lower rank in the Bible, apparently, was their interpretation. And then 2 people later, there's this performer that gets up and just went on and on singing about different parts of the female anatomy in a really just rude way.
Right, gotcha.
And the crowd was going crazy. They were so excited about it. And I was like, all this is doing is objectifying women. And here you were 2 people ago saying that that's what the Bible does. So how does that make any sense, you know?
Right.
But I guess they didn't see it that way. So I found that to be really interesting. And it really felt more like a twisted church because they had their chanting and this and that and their responses. And I even had one guy come up to me and say, in the discussion, I haven't read our holy book yet. And I go, oh, you've never read the Bible? And he goes, no, I've never read The God's Illusion by Richard Dawkins. And I was like...
all got down to holy Dawkins.
Right? Like, I was shocked. I was like, wow, you guys realize that in some way you might be considered an organized religion. That's, like... in an anti-religion sort of thing. And he was like, you know what? I'm starting to see that by being at this rally, that the more we talk about how corrupt religion is, we're starting to see more and more like an organized religion by what we're doing, which I was shocked that he came to that.
Right. So was this, and Adam, join in, what was your feeling? Was this an anti-Christian rally, or did they give equal time to Hinduism and Buddhism?
Oh, not even close. It was definitely very, very anti-Christian. And it got to the point where one of the guys even said, I wrote it down, that he'd rather be with a Christian, like be friends with a Christian, than an agnostic, because at least a Christian is smart enough to pick a side, stick with it, even though it makes them an idiot, whereas an agnostic just is completely indifferent and they're horrible. So I feel like the only people that got bashed on more than Christians were people who were agnostic, which I found to be really amusing.
Okay. So if you're in the middle of the road, you get run over.
Yeah, and it seemed like there were a few agnostic people there, so I don't really know how they felt about that.
The organization itself actually put a cross in the middle of the rally with some kind of demeaning phrase on it. I didn't get to read it, though.
Interesting. Okay, so more hatred there, I guess. Interesting. So
Oh
go ahead and you've got a couple, Jessica. You've got some handouts or something.
Oh yeah,
atheists were proselytizing or what?
They had their tent, and I was brave and went in. I wasn't really too sure what to expect, but they had different tables set up there for like recovering people from religion, like if you were raised in a religious environment and how to deal with it now, and how to deal with being hated by society because you're an atheist now. And the Constitution, I have a book called Our Constitution, the Way It Was, about how Christianity has just completely manipulated the Constitution to progress our religion, I guess is their stance. And
that's interesting.
Yeah, I have a pamphlet called An Open Letter to Jesus Christ, which just is basically 15 to 16 pages of questions after questions against Jesus, which a lot of it seems to just be poor interpretation of the Bible with lack of historical context when reading it.
Okay.
And then a little pamphlet from the Humanist Association, Good Without God, which we kept hearing. And Did You Know All the Gods Came from the Same Place, which is a little cartoon book for the kids because they had a little kid camp there, which was great.
Oh, okay.
There was lots of little kids.
That's right.
It's really upsetting.
It's interesting because they have to weed that out of the kids. There's some psychologists that published data recently that showed that children are naturally theists So they naturally believe in the existence of God without being taught. Even in secular societies, they will believe in the existence of a supreme being who is all-knowing and all-loving. And this is a natural thing that children are born that way. So you have to, if you're an atheist, you definitely got to weed that out of them. You better start teaching them early with books about atheism.
Well, and about that, they had actually said at one point, there is, I guess, a person who came in between the speakers and was talking about how they now offer summer camps for children of atheists to go to, which I thought was really interesting, because I'm like, well, Christians have summer camps too, and now you guys are starting your own summer camps to explain to children that God isn't real.
They're going to have to start tithing, I think.
I know, right? That's what I was thinking. It's very interesting.
Well, if you're just joining us, you're listening to Evidence for Faith, a ministry of Ratio Christi. I'm Keith Kendricks, and we are talking about the Reason Rally that was yesterday at the mall in Washington, D.C., and we have with us Adam Tucker from University of North Carolina Ratio Christi Club. We have Joe Gonzalez, Jessica Richardson, and Jen Quinn from Richard Stockton College in New Jersey, who all went down to the Reason Rally. So tell us a little bit about some of the highlights then. What was your favorite thing that happened, or Jen?
Okay. One of my favorite conversations was me and Jesse were standing right there after we had just listened to Richard Dawkins speak, and we were there taking notes, and there was 3 guys standing next to us, and they just kind of kept looking over like as we were taking notes, and it was a perfect opportunity because Richard Dawkins had just said, like, if you know a Christian, ask them why they're a Christian, and he said they'll only give you the answer because I want to be a good person. And so shortly after he went, the one guy, he just turned to us. He was like, "Oh, so what are you guys doing? Like, here for a school report?" And we're like, "No, we're actually, we came up all the way from South Jersey. We go to Stockton College," and he was asking us, like our purpose, why we came, and we were just saying how we were part of Ratio Christi, and that was like a perfect open door. He asked us what Ratio Christi was, and we said it's a college club where we talk about evidences for the existence of God, evidence for Christianity, and they were kind of taken aback because they just realized, I guess because you assume at first, like, we weren't wearing any, like, Christian t-shirts or anything like most people, so they're just thinking that we're there, like, for them, like, as an atheist, and so it was like a step back, like, oh, you're a Christian, but we're just saying how we believe in reason too, I said, and so then he was asking us, like for our reason, I guess, for being a Christian, and we were just saying because of the evidences where Lisa and Jessie was saying how she used to be an atheist as well, and so we just turned the question around and we asked them, like, what is the best argument you've ever heard for the existence of God? And
that's a great question.
And and so they actually all 3 of them, they were like, well, we've never heard a good evidence for the existence of God. And then come to find out later, the guy had watched William Lane Craig debates, so I knew that he heard some arguments for the existence of God, but that turned into a really great conversation. We got on the topic of scientific evidences that point toward God, and then we also got into the historical reliability of the scriptures, so that was an interesting conversation.
Excellent.
I remember one of the guys you were talking to, he actually thought the universe was infinite. And they had this black hole theory that basically eventually the world gets to a black hole and the time is so slow that it's infinite. And I said, how would this work with the law of entropy? That's in the law, second rule of the law of thermodynamics. It conflicts with the law. It can't be true. And he tells me, well, it's like a ray, but backwards. It doesn't, like a ray has a starting point but no end. But in this scenario, it would have an infinite starting point but an end. And I said, well, that's like drawing an incomplete circle. It just doesn't work out. Like, how can you have that? You see the logic behind it? Although a ray can exist because it has a starting point, it can never end. It can't go vice versa because let's say 2 billion years it ends. That starting point was never infinite. It had to end eventually. So logically, there was a problem here. And they already did the groundwork of the argument for what argument did you use? Emotion argument or something like that?
Are you talking about those 3 guys?
Yeah.
We talked both the cosmological and the teleological arguments.
If you know the cosmological argument,
some of our listeners don't know what it is.
I'll let them take that over, and I'll complete it.
briefly explain it?
No, you got it.
Okay. Well, we started off with the one guy talking about the cosmological argument first, that anything that begins to exist has to have a cause. And so the same with the universe, it had to have a cause. And his response to that pretty much was, he said that as Christians, we just go one step further. Like, he starts with he says, well, then God had to have had a cause, but it's that the universe began to exist, therefore the universe has to have a cause that's outside the universe, like a supernatural cause. And
So why doesn't God need a cause?
Well, that's a good question. You want to answer that? No, that's fine. Well, God is not, how can you say it? Our natural laws do not apply to God because he's not part of the universe. All natural laws only apply to the universe itself. Now,
And he doesn't have a beginning,
right, for like,
so he doesn't need a cause.
Well, as much as we know, we just know that he doesn't apply to any of our natural laws. Now, it's like if we had a second universe, they can have different natural laws. Maybe they don't have gravity, or gravity is like negative 4.8 or something different like that. That means the whole universe itself doesn't. Our natural laws would never apply to that universe. Such thing as God is outside our universe, so our natural laws don't apply to him.
Right. Excellent answer. Okay. Good.
we also talked about the teleological argument, which was next, which is my favorite argument for the existence of God.
All right, and you're throwing around a big word.
The teleological argument is the fine-tuning of the universe, and I started with saying how just like one DNA strand, like such a small thing, like and that's just our person, like one DNA strand in each person would have the amount of information and complexity as 10,000 like Encyclopedia Britannicas put together. So that's like saying that the Library of Congress resulted from an explosion in a printing press, and just so much information, and that's just one DNA strand. Like then when you look at the fine tuning of the universe, the location of the sun, and like the axis of the earth, the tilt, like everything is just created so perfectly so that life can exist here. And so anyway, for that argument, I don't really think he had a specific response to that. I think they just were saying how, like, Richard Dawkins got up there too. He was just saying how that's what it is. It just appears to be designed when we study science. Science is like biology that seems to appear to have a design. And then there was a lot of, like, the questions just go from one topic to the next really fast. And then the next question was, like, the reliability, like, of Jesus' Christ resurrection. And then that was a good conversation, getting on to that. I could go into it if you want.
Well, so did any of you hear any argument? I mean, even if you didn't agree with it, did you hear any argument for atheism?
Impossible.
No, did you? Even if it wasn't a good argument?
Impossible.
Why is that impossible?
Well, because even Richard Dawkins himself said you can't disprove God. An atheist doesn't only assert there's no God, but gives no arguments for it. But vice versa, we assert there is a God, but give arguments for it. So if an theist gives a reasonable argument to an atheist that cannot be debunked by logic or philosophy, which is where the realm we're dealing with, metaphysical realm,
right,
then the theist, in this sense, must be right.
Right. Excellent. Adam, have you had a chance to debrief any of your students that went with you?
We're going to Monday night. We meet on Monday night, so that'll be our meeting for this week, just kind of a debrief, share time, and question time, or whatever anybody wants to share. And that was definitely my favorite part of the trip. And like I mentioned earlier, just seeing, I guess, hopefully the fruits at least of Ratio Christie's labor, seeing the students get out and actually put this stuff into practice and be passionate and excited about it. I mean, that we got on the bus to come home with our group, and they were thrilled. They were ready to go do it again. It was infectious.
They were
really.
Pumped and rocking.
It was awesome to see.
So how many people went with you?
We had, I think, 13 students from UNC Greensboro, and then we met some other folks from the Lenore Ryan chapter and UNC Charlotte chapter. So we had a total of 23 on our bus.
Interesting. So it sounds like the Reason Rally, well, I guess it was aimed at atheists in the first place, but at least it sounds like none of the Christians that were there witnessing to the atheists really got bummed out that, wow, these atheists are just so smart and they're so rational, and, our blind faith could never hold a candle to their reasoning abilities. Doesn't sound like that's the way things went down.
Certainly not from my impression.
Great. All right, guys, we have a few minutes left, so if you want to finish up with some more arguments that you ran across or anybody else that you talked to, we'll finish up with that.
I thought one thing that was very interesting, well, two observations I thought were really interesting. One, when Richard Dawkins, you were speaking about the atheism actually being a religious movement almost. When Richard Dawkins took the stage, I was off to the side with some of our waters and materials and stuff we were handing out. And the people on the fringes literally started running to the stage
to listen to
Richard
him.
Dawkins. Literally. It was quite a sight to see.
Did he get a standing ovation?
Yeah, well, most people were standing anyway. So.
Okay.
But yes, he had plenty of cheers. And then there were a time or two where a particular speaker actually got the crowd to chant certain things.
Okay,
and
like
it
what?
was interesting that the free thinkers, they pride themselves on being free thinkers and not following authorities, were in unison chanting what their leader on the stage was telling them to chant. It was quite ironic, I thought.
Are any of the things suitable for airplay?
Honestly, I don't even remember what it was. I was just laughing because they were all doing it. I don't even remember what they were chanting.
Wow. So Richard Dawkins is a rock star.
And future president nominee.
Yes.
Oh.
That's also what we heard, was that he should run for president.
Okay. So an Englishman is going to be president of the United States. That's great. I guess we'll have to make a few changes to the Constitution to allow for that.
Well, we already corrupted it. Don't forget about that.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
So Christians corrupted it because really all those ideas are atheistic, right? Is that the gist of that?
So. Yeah, that's the idea they were trying to put across.
So,
Well, I just want to say to any Christians listening that we did see a need for apologetics, because we did see those very loud-spoken, ignorant, to say the least, Christians that came and started just yelling at people, but they didn't have a real answer. It was sad to see, but then how dangerous a position they put themselves in. One guy was being attacked by an atheist, and then when I say attacked, I mean literally, this guy started off like 20 feet away from him, talking to him, and then straight up in his face yelling at him while smoking a cigarette. And
wait, now hang on. The atheist got up in the face of the Christian, or the Christian got up in the face of the...
You had it right the first time. The atheist got into the face of the Christian.
Yeah.
And then you had this 11-year-old girl that just comes out of nowhere and actually challenges her elder about his own beliefs. And it's like this indoctrination you see within the atheist movement. It's kind of upsetting to see. I mean, even me and another Christian, Brittany, were talking to a couple, and you would see these two 40-year-old men that were just close by saying, "Can you shut up and go take that to the bathrooms? Like, if you don't want to hear it." And it's like, wow, well, you guys are nice people, I guess. Like, this is the new atheism,
Right.
the new America that we want today.
So, but for Christians who are listening, do you think that they necessarily should be afraid of the atheists and the arguments that they have? Or does this prove to you that the arguments are really weak on their side?
I was just surprised by some of the logic. Like, Christians have no reason to be afraid. You just need to be prepared. Like 1 Peter 3:15 tells us, you need to know your stuff, have your answers when you go to them, but you really and you have to focus on loving them too. It's not just about winning the argument, but you really are not going to lose the argument if you know your evidence and go to. There's nothing to be afraid, because it's not like their arguments are going to beat you out, because like when it comes in the end, like we're right. We know that it is true. So you're not going to lose the argument if you're coming at it from a reasonable place and you have your evidence with you.
You might get beat up, though.
Well, apparently that didn't happen, so that's a good thing.
If you come in love, at least.
Yep.
And if they're getting heated, then you walk away. You don't continue an argument. So.
All right,
I
Adam.
will say this real quickly, if I can.
Yeah, got a couple minutes. Go ahead.
The church should be afraid if the church is not willing to change. If we don't embrace and see the need for apologetics and moving beyond emotionalism and subjectivism, the church should be afraid. Not of the argument, but of the movement.
Right, and of the challenge that our kids will face when they do go away to college or to the workplace, and they have to face this without being prepared for it, or without even knowing that there is such a thing. I remember I used to be in the Christian church. I was really an agnostic, but I liked Christianity. I thought it was a great idea, if only it were true. Really had to accidentally discover that there was this wealth of argumentation out there, this wealth of evidence, wealth of logic, and the evidence that God existed and that Christianity was true. And, there was no Christian that, set out to teach me or my group that I was with and say, you guys need to know this. Here are the arguments. It was all just by faith and blind faith. And really, I only became a Christian accidentally because I happened to stumble across some apologetics works.
Wow.
All right. Well, Adam Tucker, we appreciate you being here with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm so proud of you guys. You did an awesome job.
And thanks to Joe Gonzalez,
Thanks for having us here.
Jessica Richardson,
Thanks for having us on again.
and Jen Quinn.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Evidence for Faith, a ministry of Ratio Christi. If you would like to contact us, send us questions or comments, you can send them to email at evidenceforfaith.com, or you can take a look at ratiochristi.org. Please join us again next week for more reasons to believe, and always remember that the best reason for being a Christian is because it's true.